Many people I talk to who are either getting a Plan B second citizenship or a series of Plan B second citizenships, or even people who are planning on expatriating from their country, they look to places like the Caribbean for second citizenship. And there's nothing wrong with that. But today I'm going to share with you why you should at least consider a country like Malta for your second passport. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. This is Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. That includes legally reducing your taxes using international tax planning, and includes having a second passport to make sure you're always protected, that you have options. And I think that giving some thought to that and understanding that having a Plan B is an investment, it's an insurance policy, and certainly many people want the most affordable insurance policy. I think it's worth considering that sometimes spending more, in this case substantially more in all honesty, is worth it for a number of reasons. And so today I'm going to share with you 7 reasons that I think you should at least consider citizenship in Malta. Now, what is Malta? Why is Malta even part of the equation? Well, Malta is a country that has, they don't call it citizenship by investment, but they have effectively what is a slightly slower path to citizenship by making a donation to the country, establishing a little bit of a connection there, renting or purchasing a property. You do a series of things that is no doubt a bit more involved than simply doing paperwork and becoming a Caribbean citizen in 6 months. You can become a citizen of Malta and by extension a citizen of the European Union in about 18 months, give or take. Now, it's going to cost you starting at about $1 million when you time you calculate all the fees if you're single, and then it goes up incrementally a little bit from there. You add 50,000 euros plus some fees for each dependent if you're married, if you have kids, etc. Now, why would you do this? Now, the general person who's going to be looking at doing this is someone who potentially wants to live in Europe. If you're Maltese, you don't have to live in Malta. People often get that wrong. You can be 18 months from now, you can say, you know what, I want to go and live in France. Not trying to recommend that, but you could make that decision and say, hey, Paris, here I come. You don't have to necessarily deal with the same level of requirements that a non-EU citizen would. You can simply go to France and say, here I am, and do some paperwork. Or someone who wants to travel is an EU citizen. Someone who perhaps is a US citizen. They are thinking either now or in the future of not being a US citizen, and the idea of losing access to a handful of countries, including the ones that they're used to, like the US and Canada and Australia and New Zealand, that bothers them. They want to have the best passport possible. That's the kind of person who's generally going to look at a program like Malta, because certainly, being a citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis, for most of us, it's pretty darn good. It is, in the grand scheme of things, a pretty good passport in terms of where you can go. It's a tax-free country. They're going to leave you alone. But if you want the best of the best, Malta's going to give you that to you. If you want the best in terms of options of where to live, St. Kitts and Nevis will allow you to live in Antigua, effectively, but it's not going to allow you to live in Paris, or to live in Rome, or to live in Lisbon. And so Malta does that. Here's the 7 reasons why I think you should consider it. I'm not saying that everyone should do this, but I'm saying that if you're looking at St. Kitts and Nevis for $150,000 plus some fees, let's just round it up to $200,000. By the time everything's done, no one wants to tell you, by the way, the total price. They don't want to tell you all the papers you've got to order, all the apostilles, all the notaries. Let's just call it $200,000. And let's say Malta's $1 million, just rough numbers. Why would you spend 5 times the price? Reason number 1, English-speaking country that you can live in Europe. A lot of people who come to me say, I want the ability to speak English, whether they're a native English speaker or they just, they don't want to learn another language. Certainly you have the Caribbean countries. You have 5 that offer citizenship by investment, and they also speak English. Probably a little bit different than what you would speak in the United States or in Australia or what have you, but they do speak English. The idea of speaking English in Europe, I think, is attractive to a number of people. If you ever wanted to go and live there, whether it's you want to go live there right away, and you could do that once you have your residence permit before the citizenship, or whether you just want to keep as an option for later, Malta certainly is an attractive place where you can do that. And there are certainly European countries where English is much less widely spoken. And so Malta gives that option that I think what the pandemic has showed us is people want a place where, at least it's worth thinking about, you can go to your country. It's nice to have the option of other countries, but if you had the choice between being a citizen of let's say Latvia or Malta, I think a lot of people would feel more comfortable in Malta. The climate is warmer, The language is, English is much more widely spoken. And so that gives you an advantage. That's one reason to consider it. The second reason is that unlike the United States, you don't have any worldwide tax obligations. You don't have any encroachment on freedoms. We have talked about the idea of some kind of global minimum tax for individuals, and I've given my thoughts for that for European citizens separately. I think there are ways to mitigate that if indeed it ever comes to fruition. But the idea is that you're getting a top quality passport. You're getting lots of options of where to live without the frustration that you might see in the U.S., where they're going to tax you, or at least subject you to tax, subject to exclusions and exemptions, no matter where you live. I've talked about Canada in particular as one country that wants to potentially copy that model in the future. And so I do believe that English-speaking countries like the U.S., like Canada, potentially Australia, are going to be more difficult on their citizens for the privilege of being a citizen. They may decide to impose more difficult policies. I think those countries probably do so before the EU. Maybe the EU comes shortly thereafter. I don't think Malta is certainly going to be the most aggressive country leading that charge. I think they'd probably push back on that if it happens in the EU. And maybe they're one of the countries, like a Hungary, that stops it. So you have basically the benefits of this Tier A passport without some of the issues that you'd find in other Tier A countries. The third reason is that, as we mentioned, as a Maltese citizen, you have the right to live and also work and study and other things in any EU country. And why this is valuable, why I've suggested this to a couple people recently, is I've had some individuals who've come, and let's say they have $30 million, they have $50 million, they have $80 million. $1 million versus $200,000 isn't going to make a significant dent, especially for the ones who are still generating income. And so what some of these people have been telling me is, I might want to live in Prague. I might want to live in, Dusseldorf. I might want to live in places, in countries, where they don't have a clear path to residence as a passive investor. Now, pretty much every country in Europe has some kind of program where if you go and start a business, you make some kind of investment, you're doing something actively, you can come on in. Some of those countries may be more strict. Some of them may require you hire more employees or put in more capital. But if you're actively, doing something locally, you can get in. Now, some of those countries are going to want that business to focus on that country. And so if you don't want to start a business that serves the Czechia, the Czech Republic, they may not work. And so they don't have a golden visa that will allow you to live in Prague, the same way that Portugal has a straightforward, just make an investment and that's all you need to do. And so if you want access to some of these European countries, not only all of them, but if you specifically want access, especially to countries where they may not have an easy way to get in and live there as a non-EU citizen, being an EU citizen allows you to pick and choose. And I had one gentleman who was like, I can think of these 4 countries. I said, none of those have an easy way for you in your situation to live there. But if you had Malta, you could go to one for a while, and then later you could decide, 2 years later, now I want to move over here. And you can do that. You have that option with EU citizenship. I think a lot of people don't fully understand that. And so even if the other country in Europe doesn't have a way to get in, for a non-EU citizen, it's easier. By the way, countries like Switzerland, a bonus point, countries like Switzerland will reduce the amount of tax that you pay as a foreign citizen because you are an EU citizen. And so sometimes someone will get Maltese citizenship, go and take advantage of Switzerland's lump sum program, and they'll do so on better terms than a non-EU citizen, i.e. an American would, because of Switzerland's relationship with Europe. So you could save potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars and actually pay back the cost of the citizenship. But that's separate. And just as an example, if you wanted to move to Switzerland, you could do that. Reason number 4 to consider this is you can travel to anywhere, including what we call the CUNA countries, Canada, US, New Zealand, and Australia. Obviously, some of those countries, as we speak, are difficult to get into. But if you want a top-tier travel document, what we call Tier A, you can do that. Now, certainly, I think those countries are aware. They know what Malta is. They know what Malta offers. And so are they going to ask you a question or two? I think it's quite possible. A question or two they might not ask to someone who's Dutch or who's British, for example. But you have really one of the best passports in the world, just about as good as any other EU passport, as good as any US passport, plus all the reasons we've already mentioned. If you don't want to sacrifice any travel, and if you don't want to sacrifice travel to some of the world's most sought-after countries to visit, then Malta gives that to you. And it's really the only option to get access to all those countries by making a passive investment. The 5th reason is if you are American or if you are a US renunciant, let's say that you are an American and you plan on giving up US citizenship as, let's say, a citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis, and you, as we have covered recently, say, hey, how am I going to get my U.S. visa? How long can I stay in the U.S. on my visa? You just assume that visas are handed out to everyone who asks, and you go and apply for a visa, and they say, yeah, no thanks. You are now ineligible to apply for Malta because you've been denied a U.S. visa. And so if you're planning on not having access to the U.S., by the way, you don't have to be a U.S. renunciant. You could be someone from India or China, whatever else. If you go and apply for a visa to U.S., or in the case of the other people, let's say you apply for a visa to Canada and you're rejected, Malta doesn't want you. And so the idea is potentially get it while you can. Don't go out and try and save money and then create a problem for yourself and then try and get it back later. If you can afford it, if you have the 30, 50, 80 million dollars, just do it right the first time. Don't worry about getting rejected for a visa if you want to go to one of those top tier countries, and then later not being eligible to get Malta later. So it's not, they're very strict in Malta. They reject about 1 out of 4 people. So it could be character issues, criminal issues, what have you, but it also could be visa issues. And so obviously you're more likely to have that as a citizen of Dominica than as a citizen of the United States. Number 6, I would say, is building up a good profile. I've had a number of very successful ultra high net worth individuals who they just want to have the top tier passport. I don't think there's a problem with the Caribbean. I don't think almost anyone's going to judge you. Certainly if you are an American and you give up your U.S. citizenship, somebody may occasionally kind of, smirk at your Caribbean passport. Maybe they do that to Malta also, but I think the profile of having an EU citizenship is certainly higher. And I've had people who are saying, listen, I want to have a very carefully crafted profile of citizenships. I don't just want to be willy-nilly about it. I want the best ones that look nice and they give me access to do things. If you're an EU citizen, you can invest, you can buy property, you can do a lot more things in the EU than you can as a non-EU citizen. And so the profile is very valuable. And really the 7th reason is if you like any of these benefits, the program could simply go away. Malta has been very aggressive in pushing back on the European Commission for saying that they don't want Malta to have a program. They said, listen, this program's helping us. We're becoming financially independent. It has helped us financially. We're a small country and the money's very valuable to us. The European Commission does not like the idea that people who have 30, 50, or $80 million or more can come in and simply obtain European citizenship with all these benefits. And so does it exist in the same capacity where your time commitment in Malta, there is a time commitment, but it's not that substantial. It is more than the 0 time commitment you would find in most Caribbean countries, but you're not going to be forced to move there for years on end or even a year. And so the program could either become more difficult, as it already has in the last year and a half, or it could simply go away in the future, as we've seen with Cyprus, the Cyprus program, for example. And so getting in when it's available, taking advantage of this, and just keeping that in your back pocket or actively using it are potential reasons why you would want to consider the extra cost of getting the creme de la creme of citizenships to start, rather than potentially working your way up. Don't stop now. We've got well over 1,000 more videos here on YouTube for you to watch and learn how to go where you're treated best. And if you want to work with Nomad Capitalists personally, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply, learn about our unique, tried and true process, garnered over years of experience, and learn how you can become our client.